I never believed in fate until the night I saved a monster's life. The Golden Phoenix restaurant hummed with the quiet efficiency of old money and dangerous men. Crystal chandeliers cast honeyed light across tables, where conversations happened in murmurs, where deals worth more than small countries were sealed with handshakes and threats disguised as pleasantries. I'd worked there for 3 months, long enough to recognize the patterns. Who sat with their backs to walls, who never looked at the menu, who made the kitchen staff nervous just by existing. But I'd never seen him before. He arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, flanked by 2 men in suits so perfectly tailored they might as well have been uniforms. The entire restaurant seemed to inhale and hold its breath. Even Marco, our veteran maitre d' who'd supposedly served 3 presidents and a Saudi prince, straightened his spine and smoothed his jacket before approaching. I was refilling water glasses. At table 7 when I first saw his face. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and brutal beauty. His eyes were the color of smoke, gray and penetrating, missing nothing as they swept the room. He moved like violence contained, every step deliberate, every gesture economic. When he sat at the corner table, the one we kept reserved even on our busiest nights, though I'd never known for whom, the 2 men positioned themselves with military precision, one facing the entrance, one watching the kitchen. "That's Dante Carmine," whispered Sophia, one of the senior waitresses, as she passed me carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Don't stare. Don't approach unless he summons you. And for God's sake, don't make any mistakes." My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the napkin in my grip. I'd heard the name, of course. Everyone in the city had. Dante Carmine, the youngest Don in the history of the 5 families, the man who'd consolidated power in 3 years through a combination of strategic brilliance and ruthless elimination of anyone who stood in his way. The newspapers called him a businessman. The streets called him something else entirely. Emma. My manager's voice cut through my thoughts. "You're taking table 12. I looked up sharply. "But that's your assignment." His expression left no room for argument. "Michelle will brief you on the special requests." "And Emma?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Be invisible. Be perfect. Understand?" I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of preparation. Michelle, the head chef, personally explained every dish on the tasting menu that had been prearranged. 7 courses, each paired with specific wines. The kitchen moved with unusual intensity. Every plate examined 3 times before it left the pass. "This is the most important service of your career," Michel said, his French accent thick with stress. "Do not fuck this up." I carried the first course, seared scallops with a delicate saffron reduction, through the dining room on steady feet, years of waitressing muscle memory overriding my racing heart. As I approached table 12, those gray eyes lifted and locked onto mine. The world seemed to tilt. Up close, he was even more devastating. A thin scar traced his left jawline, a white line against olive skin that somehow made him more compelling rather than less. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car, the jacket open to reveal a charcoal shirt with the top button undone. No tie. A gold watch caught the light, the only jewelry besides a signet ring on his right hand. "Good evening," I said, surprised my voice came out steady. "Your first course." I placed the plates with practiced precision, careful not to let my hands shake. The 2 men with him, bodyguards, soldiers, whatever they were, watched me with the focused attention of predators evaluating prey. Dante Carmine didn't speak. He simply nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his chin, and returned his attention to the man sitting across from him. Nikolai Volkov. I recognized him from the photos that occasionally appeared in the business section. A Russian oligarch with suspected ties to organized crime. Tonight, he smiled like a shark, all teeth and no warmth. "The territory in Red Hook," Volkov was saying as I stepped back, "represents a $500 million opportunity. Your distribution network, my supply chain, we both walk away very, very rich." I retreated to my station by the bar, but I couldn't stop watching that table. Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed charged, electric with intention I couldn't name. The second course came and went. The third, Dante Carmine ate with the same controlled precision he did everything else, engaging in conversation only when necessary, his responses measured and revealing nothing. It was during the fourth course, roasted duck breast with cherry gastrique, that I noticed it, Volkov's wineglass sat untouched while he spoke animatedly about shipping routes and port authorities, but Dante's glass, freshly poured by a sommelier I didn't recognize, had a faint iridescence on its surface, a slight discoloration that caught the light wrong. My heart stopped. I'd seen that shimmer before, years ago, during my brief and disastrous semester of pre-med before I dropped out due to lack of funds. We'd studied toxins, poisons, the ways they presented in different mediums. This looked like... No, it couldn't be. But the sommelier had disappeared. And Volkov was watching Dante's wineglass with an expression that made my blood run cold. Time seemed to slow as Dante Carmine lifted the glass, bringing it to his lips. I moved without thinking. 3 steps brought me to the table. Every eye in the room fixed on me as I leaned down, close enough to smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke, and whispered directly into his ear, "That's poisoned." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Dante Carmine went utterly still, a predator freezing before the strike. His free hand, the one not holding the wineglass, moved with blinding speed, clamping around my wrist with enough force to make me gasp. "Explain," he said softly. One word, loaded with so much menace that I felt it in my bones. "The glass," I breathed, acutely aware that every person at the table was now staring at me, that Volkov's expression had shifted from surprise to something calculating and deadly. "The wine. Look at the surface, there's discoloration. Oleander maybe, or something similar. I could be wrong, but I didn't get to finish." Dante's eyes cut to the wineglass, studying it with sudden intensity. Then, with deliberate slowness, he set it down on the table and turned to Volkov. "Interesting," he said, his voice like silk over steel. "Nikolai, would you care to toast our new partnership?" "With my glass, of course." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Volkov's smile faltered. "I have my own... I insist." Dante pushed the wineglass across the table, the movement gentle but absolute. "It seems only fitting." Silence crashed over the restaurant like a wave. Even the ambient music seemed to die. Volkov stared at the glass, then at Dante, then at me, and I saw murder in his eyes. "This is unnecessary," Volkov began. Dante cut him off with a gesture, snapping his fingers once. The 2 men flanking him moved as one, their jackets falling open just enough to reveal shoulder holsters. Around the restaurant, I suddenly noticed other men rising from tables, converging with the same predatory purpose. We weren't in a restaurant anymore. We were in a cage, and the apex predator had just revealed himself. "Drink," Dante said quietly, "or my men will help you." Volkov's hand trembled as it reached for the glass. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His eyes darted toward the exit, where 2 more suited men now stood, then back to Dante. "You can't prove... I don't need to prove anything." Dante's voice never rose, never hardened, but somehow became more terrifying in its complete calm. "I simply need to know. So drink, Nikolai. Show me I'm wrong." The Russian oligarch's fingers closed around the stem of the wineglass. For a moment, I thought he might actually do it. Might actually drink the poison rather than admit what he'd done. Instead, he threw the glass. It shattered against the wall as Volkov lunged from his chair, hand diving inside his jacket. But he was too slow, far too slow. Before he'd moved 2 feet, Dante's men had weapons drawn, red dots dancing across Volkov's chest. "Idiot," Dante said, almost sadly. He stood with fluid grace, buttoning his jacket with one hand while still maintaining his iron grip on my wrist with the other. "Did you really think you could kill me in my own city? At a table I've held for 5 years? You're finished, Carmine," Volkov spat, his face flushed with rage and fear. The Bratva will send flowers to your funeral." Dante's smile was razor-sharp and utterly without warmth. "Take him." What happened next unfolded with choreographed precision. Volkov's screams were muffled by a hand over his mouth as he was dragged toward the kitchen. The other diners, Every single one of them, I realized with dawning horror, part of this world, returned to their meals as if nothing had happened. Someone was already cleaning the shattered wine glass, and through it all, Dante Carmine held my wrist, his thumb pressed against my racing pulse. "You," he said, finally turning those smoke-gray eyes on me fully, "just saved my life. I was just—" My voice cracked. "I noticed something wrong. You noticed something a dozen men in this room missed, including me." He studied me with an intensity that made me want to squirm, but his grip kept me frozen in place. "What's your name?" "Emma Torres. Emma Torres." He said my name like he was tasting it, memorizing it. And how does a waitress recognize oleander poisoning in wine? I was pre-med. Before I dropped out, we studied toxins. Pre-med. Something flickered in his expression, there and gone too quickly to identify. "You're educated." "Not educated enough to afford medical school, apparently." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. "Smart and honest. Rare combination." He released my wrist finally, but immediately produced a card from his jacket pocket. Heavy cardstock, matte black with a single phone number embossed in silver. "Take this." "I don't—" "Take it," he repeated, pressing it into my hand. "You'll need it." "Why would I—" The question died on my lips as the reality of what I'd just done crashed over me. I'd interfered in whatever deadly game was being played here. I'd seen Volkov dragged away. I'd heard Dante Carmine, the most dangerous man in the city, casually discuss murder. I knew too much. Terror must have shown on my face because Dante's expression shifted, becoming almost gentle. He reached up slowly, giving me time to flinch away, and tucked a strand of my dark hair behind my ear. "You're in danger now," he said quietly, his voice pitched for my ears alone. "Volkov has associates. They'll come looking for answers, for revenge. They'll discover you're the one who exposed their plan. But I didn't mean. Intentions don't matter in my world, Emma. Only actions. And your actions tonight put a target on your back." His thumb brushed my cheek, a gesture so at odds with everything I knew about him that I froze. "Go home, pack a bag. I'll have men watching your apartment within the hour. You can't just—" "I can. I am." He stepped back, adjusting his cuffs with casual efficiency. "You saved my life. Now I'll save yours, whether you want me to or not." He turned and walked toward the exit, his men falling into formation around him. At the door, he paused and looked back at me one final time. "Keep that phone close, Emma Torres. When you realize how much danger you're truly in, call the number. I'll come." Then he was gone, leaving me standing in the center of a restaurant that suddenly felt like a crime scene, with a black business card burning in my palm, and the terrible certainty that my entire life had just irrevocably changed, because I'd whispered 4 words to a monster. And now the monster knew my name. I didn't call the number. For 3 days, I tried to pretend that night at the Golden Phoenix had been some kind of fever dream, that I could return to my normal life of double shifts and instant ramen and pretending my student loans weren't crushing me. I showed up for work only to find I'd been given a month of paid leave. "For your safety," Marco said, not meeting my eyes. My manager handed me an envelope containing more money than I'd made in 6 months, called it hazard pay, and told me not to come back until I received further notice. The black business card sat on my nightstand like a live grenade. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was safe, that men like Dante Carmine had more important things to do than remember a waitress who'd happened to notice something was wrong with his wine. I was wrong. The first sign came on day 2. A black SUV parked across from my apartment building, engine running, windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb light. It sat there for hours, changed shifts at midnight with another identical vehicle, never moved except to follow me to the grocery store and back. I told myself they were Dante's men. Protection, like he'd promised. But on day 3, the SUV was gone, and something else had taken its place. I felt them before I saw them, that primal awareness that prey develops when predators are near. Walking home from the corner bodega at dusk, I noticed the same gray sedan passing me twice. A man in a leather jacket watching me from a bus stop, his attention too focused, too intense. Another one pretending to text on his phone while maintaining pace exactly 20 feet behind me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I quickened my steps. 3 blocks from my apartment. 2. 1. They moved when I reached for my building's door. Emma Torres? The voice came from behind me, accented. Russian, I realized with ice flooding my veins. You will come with us. Now. I ran. Stupid, probably, but instinct overrode logic. I bolted down the sidewalk, my bag bouncing against my hip, sneakers slapping pavement. Behind me, shouts in Russian, the sound of running feet. A hand caught my jacket. I spun, clawing at the man's face, and he swore as my nails raked his cheek. Another man appeared from nowhere, grabbing my arm with bruising force. Little bitch. The gunshot shattered the evening air. Everything stopped. The man holding me released his grip, stumbling backward as a red bloom appeared on his shoulder. His companion dove for cover behind a parked car. All around us, people screamed and scattered, and through the chaos walked Dante Carmine, a gun held loosely in one hand, 4 men in suits flanking him like an honor guard. He looked utterly calm, like he'd just stepped out for coffee rather than appeared to save my life for the second time in 3 days. His gray eyes found me, swept over me assessing for damage, then shifted to the 2 Russians with the cold focus of a sniper acquiring targets. Gentlemen, he said pleasantly, you're in my territory, uninvited. The uninjured Russian reached for his weapon. He didn't make it. Dante's men moved with brutal efficiency. Shots fired with suppressors that turned gunfire into harsh coughs, bodies dropping. The whole thing lasted maybe 5 seconds. 5 seconds, and 2 men lay bleeding on the sidewalk of my quiet neighborhood. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only stare at the spreading pools of blood and wonder if I was going to vomit. Emma. Dante's voice cut through my shock. He was suddenly in front of me, blocking my view of the bodies, his hands on my shoulders, warm and steady. Look at me, just at me. I dragged my eyes up to his face, found something unexpected there. Not coldness, not the detachment of a man who just ordered deaths as casually as ordering coffee. Concern. Almost tenderness. You're safe, he said quietly, but we need to move. Now. More will come. I can't. My voice shook. I didn't want. I know. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, the gesture achingly gentle. But wanting doesn't matter anymore. You're in this now, Emma. The only question is whether you survive it. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Dante muttered something in Italian, then made a decision. Romano, he called to one of his men. Handle the police. Buy us 10 minutes. Boss, 10 minutes. Then, to my absolute shock, Dante Carmine bent and lifted me into his arms like I weighed nothing. I gasped, instinctively clutching his shoulders. What are you? Saving your life. He carried me toward a black SUV that had appeared at the curb, engine running. Again, you're welcome. He deposited me in the back seat with surprising care, then slid in beside me. The door slammed shut, and we were moving, the vehicle accelerating smoothly away from the scene of 2 murders in front of my apartment building. I pressed against the far door, my whole body trembling. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe. He studied me with those penetrating gray eyes, reading me like I was a book written in a language only he understood. You're in shock. 2 men just died. 2 men who were going to torture and kill you, yes. No emotion in his voice, just facts. Volkov's associates, they wanted to know exactly how much you told me, how much you saw. Then they would have dumped your body in the river. My stomach heaved. I pressed a hand to my mouth. Dante leaned forward, produced a bottle of water from somewhere, pressed it into my shaking hands. Drink. Slowly. I obeyed because I didn't know what else to do. The water was cold, grounding. It helped, a little. I told you to call, Dante said after a moment, his tone almost disappointed. I had men watching your building, good men. They were only supposed to rotate out for 30 minutes, long enough for a shift change. The Bratva must have been watching, waiting for that exact window. How did you know to come? I didn't. A muscle ticked in his jaw. I was 3 blocks away meeting with my accountant. One of my men radioed that they'd lost visual on you, and I just knew. He'd known. Somehow this man who'd met me once, who had no reason to care whether I lived or died beyond a debt of gratitude, had known I was in danger. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He looked out the window at the passing city lights. "You can't go home, Emma. Not now, maybe not ever. Your apartment is compromised. Your workplace, anywhere you've ever been, is now a potential kill zone. So what am I supposed to do?" The reality was starting to sink in, sharp and terrible. I can't just disappear. I have a life, "You have a target on your back," he interrupted, not unkindly. "And until I eliminate every person connected to Volkov's organization who might seek revenge, you're not safe anywhere in the city except with me." The SUV turned onto a tree-lined street I didn't recognize. The buildings becoming gradually more upscale, doormen and private security, the kind of neighborhood where a studio apartment probably cost more per month than I made in 6. "With you," I repeated slowly. "I have a property. Secure. My men guard it 24/7. You'll stay there until this is resolved." "You're asking me to move in with you." "I'm not asking." Anger flared through my fear. "You can't just kidnap me. I can." "I am." He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. "Two options, Emma. You come with me voluntarily to a place where I can protect you, where you'll be fed and housed and safe. Or I have my men collect you, take you there anyway, and you spend the next few weeks hating me while I keep you alive. Your choice." "That's not a choice." "No," he agreed quietly. "It's not, but it's all I can offer you right now." The SUV pulled up in front of a building that looked like it had been transplanted from a European capital. All limestone and iron balconies, and quiet. Understated wealth. The doorman immediately opened the car door, nodding deferentially to Dante. "Mr. Carmine. Good evening." "James." Dante exited the vehicle, then turned back to me, extending one hand. "Emma." I stared at that outstretched hand for a long moment. Saw the dried blood on his cuff from where he'd checked the Russian's pulse. Remembered the coldness in his eyes as he'd ordered the cleanup. Knew with absolute certainty that if I took his hand, if I stepped into his world, I would never be the same. But I also remembered the way those men had grabbed me, the fear, the certainty that I was about to die. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and he pulled me gently from the vehicle. Led me past the doorman, through a marble lobby that echoed with our footsteps, into an elevator with mirrors and brass fixtures. The doors closed. We rose in silence. "I'm scared," I admitted quietly, "because there seemed no point in pretending otherwise." "Good." Dante didn't release my hand. "Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. Are you ever afraid?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw something vulnerable flicker across his features. Every day. The elevator opened onto a private foyer, because of course his apartment had a private foyer. Dante led me through double doors into a space that could only be described as breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Dark hardwood floors and contemporary furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. Art on the walls that looked original, and probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. "This is your home?" I breathed. "One of them." He released my hand finally, shrugging out of his blood-spattered jacket and draping it over a chair like it wasn't evidence of multiple murders. "You'll take the guest room. East wing, second door. There's clothes in the closet that should fit. I had someone bring them earlier. You knew I'd come here. I hoped you'd call first. But yes, I prepared for this contingency." He moved to a bar cart, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. "Drink?" "I don't." "You do tonight." He poured a second glass, brought it to me. "You just watched 2 men die. You're entitled to numb the edges." I took the glass, our fingers brushing. The whiskey burned going down, but warmth spread through my chest, loosening some of the terrible tension. "How long?" I asked. "How long before I can go home?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the glittering city below. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. "I don't know, Emma. The Bratva doesn't forgive easily. Volkov had powerful friends. This could take days or weeks, or... He trailed off. But I heard what he didn't say, or forever. I never asked for this, I whispered. No. He turned back to me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. Something raw and honest and aching. You didn't. You saw poison in a wine glass and could have stayed silent. Should have stayed silent. Any rational person would have. But you would have died. Yes. He took a step toward me, then another, until we were close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell that cedar and smoke cologne. Why did you do it, Emma? Why did you save me? I don't know, I admitted. I just couldn't watch you die, even though you knew what I was, what I am. I didn't know anything except that someone was trying to kill you. And now that you've seen what happens to people who threaten me? His hand lifted, fingers ghosting along my jaw with heartbreaking gentleness. Are you afraid of me? I should have said yes. Should have recoiled from this man who'd killed without hesitation. Who'd brought me to his home not entirely with my consent. Who represented everything dangerous and forbidden. But when I looked into those smoke-gray eyes, I saw something that terrified me more than his violence ever could. I saw someone lonely, someone haunted. Someone who'd built an empire on blood and brutality, but who'd just spent an entire evening ensuring I was safe. Yes, I breathed, but not in the way you think. His thumb traced my lower lip, and electricity shot through my entire body. For a heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me, wanted him to kiss me, which was insane, which was wrong, which was... He stepped back abruptly, something like pain flashing across his features. Your room is ready. You should rest. His voice had gone cold, distant. The vulnerable moment shattered like glass. Tomorrow we'll discuss security protocols. For now you're safe. He turned and walked away, disappearing down a hallway, leaving me standing alone in his vast, beautiful apartment with a half-empty glass of whiskey, and the certainty that I'd just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. I'd saved a monster's life. And now the monster was keeping me in a cage made of luxury and protection. The only question was whether I wanted to escape or whether, terrifyingly, I wanted to stay. I didn't sleep that first night. How could I, in a bedroom larger than my entire apartment, with sheets that probably cost more than my monthly salary? Every shadow seemed threatening. Every distant sound, and there were so many in this vast penthouse, made me jolt upright. Heart hammering. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and padded barefoot into the main living area, wrapped in the silk robe I'd found hanging in the guest room closet. I wasn't alone. Dante sat in one of the leather armchairs by the floor-to-ceiling windows, still wearing his dress shirt and pants from earlier, though the shirt was now unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his elbows. A laptop sat open on his lap, casting blue light across his sharp features. A glass of whiskey rested on the side table, amber liquid glowing. He looked up as I approached, and something flickered in his expression. Couldn't sleep. Could you? I gestured at the laptop, the whiskey. Looks like you're still working. I don't sleep much. He closed the laptop, set it aside. Hazard of the profession. Someone's always trying to kill you. Better to see them coming. I moved to the windows, pressing one hand against the cool glass. The city stretched below us, a carpet of lights extending to the horizon. From up here, it looked peaceful, beautiful. You couldn't see the blood on the streets, the violence in the shadows. I keep thinking about those men, I said quietly. The ones who grabbed me. The ones you... killed. He finished my sentence without hesitation. Say it, Emma, don't soften it. I killed them. Doesn't it bother you? I turned to face him. Taking lives like that? Dante was quiet for a long moment, studying me with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see straight through me. Then he stood, moving to join me at the window with that controlled, predatory grace. Every life I take is a calculation, he said finally. Those men tonight? They were sent to torture and murder an innocent woman because she prevented an assassination. They'd done it before. I had my people pull their records. 12 confirmed kills between them, mostly women, mostly drawn out. His jaw tightened. So no, Emma, their deaths don't bother me. Not even a little. And Volkov? Volkov tried to poison me during a negotiation. in my city. At a table I've held for 5 years. His voice dropped, going cold and dangerous. He was stealing from my operations, cutting my product with cheaper alternatives, pocketing the difference. When I discovered it, he decided death was easier than accounting. He was wrong. What happened to him? I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I asked anyway. Dante's smile was sharp as a blade. He's currently in a warehouse in Red Hook, having a very unpleasant conversation with my head of security. By morning, I'll know every detail of his operation, every associate, every plan. Then, he shrugged, then he'll have an unfortunate accident. I should have been horrified. Should have been repulsed. But instead, I found myself asking why. Why build this empire? Why choose this life? I didn't choose it. It chose me. He turned to face me fully, and for the first time, I saw something raw in his expression. My father ran the Carmine family before me. When I was 16, a rival family decided they wanted our territory. They came to our home, killed my father, my mother, my younger sister. My breath caught. Dante, I was at boarding school. Got the call at midnight. By the time I flew home, my entire family was in the ground. His hands clenched at his sides. I had 2 choices, run or take what was mine by blood. So I stayed. Learned. Fought. Killed everyone involved in my family's murder and anyone who stood in my way after. How old were you? 17 when I became Don. 20 when I'd consolidated enough power that no one questioned it. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising gentleness. I've been at war for 9 years, Emma. Every day, every decision, every breath is calculated to maintain control. To keep my people safe. To make sure what happened to my family never happens again. I understood then. The coldness, the brutality, the absolute control, it wasn't psychopathy. It was trauma. He'd built an empire on the graves of his family and fortified it with violence because violence was all that had ever protected anything he loved. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. His hand lingered at my cheek, thumb tracing my cheekbone. I made my choices. I live with them. But you're lonely. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Dante's eyes widened fractionally. The first time I'd seen him truly surprised. What makes you say that? You have an empire, loyal men, all the money and power in the world. I gestured at the penthouse, the city beyond. But you're standing here at 3 a.m, drinking alone, working because you can't sleep. When was the last time you had someone you could actually trust? Not soldiers, not business associates. Someone who saw you, not just the dawn. Something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor I'd thought impenetrable. You barely know me. I know you saved my life. I know you brought me to your home instead of stashing me in some safe house with guards. I know you're standing close enough to touch me, but you keep pulling away like you're afraid of something. I am afraid. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm afraid of what I might do if I don't. The air between us charged with electricity. His hand still cupped my face, and I found myself leaning into his touch, my own hand rising to rest against his chest. Beneath my palm, his heart hammered, fast and hard, betraying the emotion he tried so hard to contain. Emma. My name was a warning. A plea. You should go back to your room. Why? Because I'm trying very hard to be honorable, to protect you without taking advantage, and you're making it extremely difficult. What if I don't want you to be honorable? The words shocked me as much as they clearly shocked him. But they were true. Standing here in the dark, feeling the heat of him, seeing the man beneath the monster, I wanted him. Wanted to close the distance. Wanted to know what it felt like to be held by someone powerful enough to keep the darkness at bay. You don't know what you're saying, don't I? I stepped closer until our bodies were almost touching. You think I don't feel it? This thing between us? It started the moment I whispered in your ear at the restaurant. Maybe before that, when you first walked in and I couldn't look away. That's fear talking. Adrenaline. Trauma bonding. Maybe. I tilted my face up, holding his gaze. Or maybe I'm just tired of being afraid. Maybe I want to feel something else. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then with a sound somewhere between a curse and a prayer, Dante Carmine surrendered. His mouth found mine with bruising intensity. Not gentle. Not tentative, but claiming. Possessive. His hand slid into my hair, angling my head as he deepened the kiss, and I gasped against his lips. He tasted like whiskey and danger, and I'd never wanted anything more in my entire life. My back hit the window, the cool glass a shock against my heated skin. Dante's body pressed against mine, all hard muscle and controlled power, and when his other hand gripped my hip, pulling me tighter against him, I made a sound I'd never made before, Emma. He breathed against my mouth. "If we do this—" "Stop talking," I whispered back, then pulled him down for another kiss. He made a low sound in his throat, something primal and possessive, and for several moments there was nothing but heat and want, and the slide of his mouth against mine. His hands roamed, never crossing lines, but mapping my body through the silk robe with an intensity that made my knees weak. Then, abruptly, he pulled back. "No." The word was harsh, almost pained. He stepped away, running a hand through his hair, his breathing ragged. "No, this is wrong!" Cold flooded my chest, replacing the heat. "Dante, you're under my protection, under duress. You're here because you have nowhere else to go, because I've trapped you in a situation you never asked for." He turned away, gripping the back of the chair hard enough his knuckles went white. "I won't take advantage of that. I can't." Shame burned through me. "You think I kissed you because I feel obligated? I think you kissed me because your world just exploded, and I'm the only solid thing you can find to hold on to." His voice was rough, heavy with something that might have been regret. "And that's not enough, Emma. That's not real. How do you know what's real? Because I've lived in this world long enough to recognize the difference between genuine connection and survival instinct." He finally turned back, and the look in his eyes nearly broke me, want and restraint warring in equal measure. "Go to bed, please, before I stop being strong enough to do the right thing." I wanted to argue, wanted to close the distance again, to prove to him that what I felt was real, was choice, was more than just fear-seeking comfort. But something in his expression stopped me. Not coldness, the opposite. Raw vulnerability that told me he was barely holding on, that if I pushed, he would break, and we'd both end up somewhere we might regret. So I nodded, whispered, "Good night," walked back to the guest room on shaking legs. But as I closed the door and pressed my back against it, I heard him, so quiet I almost missed it. "Dannazione, what have I done?" I didn't sleep the rest of that night either. But this time, it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was the memory of his mouth on mine, and the terrible, exhilarating knowledge that I was falling for a man who could destroy me in a dozen different ways, and I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Morning came with the smell of coffee and the low murmur of voices. Dressed in clothes I found in the guest room closet. Designer jeans that fit perfectly, a soft cashmere sweater in dove gray, even undergarments in exactly my size. The fact that Dante had somehow known my measurements sent a confusing mix of appreciation and unease through me. When I emerged, I found the penthouse transformed. 4 men in dark suits occupied various positions, by the elevator, near the windows, one reading something on a tablet at the dining table. They all looked up as I entered, assessing, then nodding respectfully before returning to their tasks. Dante stood in the kitchen, impossibly, looking domestic in black slacks and a charcoal sweater pushed up to his elbows. He was plating what looked like a genuine Italian breakfast, fresh pastries, fruit, espresso in delicate cups. "You cook?" The words escaped before I could filter them. He glanced up, and something heated flickered in his eyes before he shuttered it. "My nonna taught me," said a man who can't feed himself is no kind of man at all. He gestured to the counter. "Sit, eat, we have things to discuss." I slid onto one of the bar stools, acutely aware of the distance he maintained, careful not to get too close after last night. One of the suited men materialized with a cup of coffee, perfectly prepared with cream and sugar. "How did you— I know everything about you." "Emma." Dante's tone was matter-of-fact, not threatening. "Your coffee order, your dress size, your birthday, your mother's name, your college transcripts, your credit score." He slid a plate toward me. "I had my people pull a complete background check the morning after the Golden Phoenix. Before I even knew you'd be in danger, I knew everything. I should have been angry, should have felt violated. But instead, I found myself asking, why? Because you saved my life, and I needed to understand who you were. He leaned against the counter, espresso cup in hand. What I found was unexpected. What did you find? A woman who dropped out of medical school not because she couldn't handle it. Your grades were exceptional, but because you sent every spare dollar to your mother in Arizona to cover her cancer treatments. His eyes held mine. A woman who works double shifts at a restaurant she's overqualified for because it has the best health insurance, who donates to 3 different charities despite barely being able to pay rent, who volunteers at a free clinic on Sundays. My throat tightened. You investigated my mother? I did more than investigate. As of yesterday, her medical bills are paid in full. She's been transferred to the best oncology center in Phoenix with a private suite and round-the-clock care, all expenses covered. I set down my coffee cup carefully, afraid if I didn't, I'd drop it. Why would you do that? Because you saved my life. Because she raised a daughter brave enough to whisper poison warnings to a Mafia boss. Because I can. He took a sip of espresso, watching me over the rim. Call her if you don't believe me. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone, found 17 missed calls from my mother, hit redial with my heart in my throat. She answered on the first ring. Emma. Oh my God, Emma. The hospital called and they said everything's taken care of, that I'm being moved to a new facility, but I don't understand how. It's okay, Mom. My voice cracked. It's complicated, but it's okay. You're going to be fine. We talked for 5 minutes, my mother crying with relief and confusion while I tried to explain without really explaining anything. When I finally hung up, I found Dante watching me with an unreadable expression. I can never repay you for that, I said quietly. I don't want repayment. I want you to understand something. He set down his cup, moving closer, not touching, but close enough I could feel his presence like heat. You're under my protection now, Emma. That means your family is under my protection. Your mother will receive the best care available for as long as she needs it. No cost, no strings. There are always strings. Not with this. His hand lifted, almost touching my face, then dropped. Your safety. Your mother's health. Those aren't negotiations. They're not leverage. They're simply what I'll provide because you gave me something priceless. My life. One of the suited men cleared his throat. Boss, we need to discuss security protocols. Dante nodded, gesturing for me to follow him to the dining table where someone had spread out what looked like architectural plans and maps. This is my primary residence, Dante explained, pointing to the building schematics. 32nd floor. Private elevator, reinforced walls, bulletproof windows. Only 4 people have access codes besides me, and now you. He produced a sleek black phone, handed it to me. This is yours. Encrypted, untraceable. Pre-programmed with numbers for me, my head of security, and a panic button that will bring 12 men to your location in under 3 minutes. You're making me sound like a prisoner. I'm making you sound like someone whose life is in danger. His voice hardened. The Bratva has 3 main operations in this city. We hit 2 of them last night. Sent a clear message that retaliation against you will be met with war. But there's still 1 cell we haven't located. And until we do, you don't leave this building without me or a full security detail. For how long? Until it's finished. He pulled up photos on a tablet. Grim crime scene images I immediately wished I hadn't seen. This is what they do to people who cross them, Emma. I won't let that be you. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of security briefings. I learned panic routes, safe words, which staff members had been vetted and cleared. Learned that the penthouse had a panic room accessible through the master bedroom, stocked with supplies for 3 days. Learned that Dante slept with 2 loaded guns, one under his pillow, one in his nightstand. By noon, my head was spinning. I need air, I said finally. I need to process all this. Dante studied me for a moment, then nodded to one of his men. Tony, prep the car. We're going out. Sir, with respect, that's not advisable. I'm not asking. The steel in his voice shut down any further argument. Miss Torres needs to leave this building, and I'm taking her somewhere she can breathe. Prep the car. 15 minutes later, we were in the back of an SUV with tinted windows so dark it felt like being in a cave. 2 vehicles flanked us, one ahead, one behind. and I counted at least 6 armed men total in our convoy. Where are we going? I asked as we wound through midday traffic. You'll see. We drove for maybe 20 minutes, leaving the downtown core for an area near the waterfront I didn't recognize. Finally, we pulled up in front of a small, utterly unexpected building, a bookstore, wedged between warehouses, with old brick and wooden shelves visible through the window. A bookstore? I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. My bookstore. Dante exited the vehicle, came around to open my door. Come. The security team fanned out, securing the perimeter while Dante led me inside. The space was exactly what a bookstore should be, crammed with floor-to-ceiling shelves, the smell of old paper and leather, comfortable reading chairs tucked in corners. Completely empty of other customers. I bought it 3 years ago, Dante explained, running his fingers along a shelf spine. The owner was being extorted, was going to close. So I eliminated his problem and bought the business. He glanced at me. I come here when I need to think, to remember there are still quiet places in the world. I moved through the stacks, trailing my fingers over titles. A Mafia boss who reads. A man who reads. He corrected gently. The other is just what I do. I found him in the Italian literature section naturally, holding a worn copy of Dante's Inferno. Is that why your parents named you Dante? Family tradition. Every first son for 5 generations. He set the book back carefully. Though my nonna always said they should have waited to see my personality before cursing me with the name of a man who wrote about hell. Do you feel like you're in hell? Sometimes. He moved closer, and in the dim bookstore lighting, his eyes looked almost silver. Other times I think hell would be easier. At least there, everyone knows they're damned. In my world, we all pretend we're still human. You are human, Dante. Am I? His hand lifted, cupping my face with heartbreaking tenderness. Sometimes I'm not sure anymore. I've killed so many people, Emma. Made so many decisions that chose power over morality. At what point does the monster become all that's left? When you stop asking that question. I covered his hand with mine. Actual monsters don't wonder if they're monsters. He made a sound somewhere between a laugh and something more pained. You see the best in me? I'm not sure whether that makes you remarkably perceptive or dangerously naive. Maybe both. Definitely both. His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath caught. I should stay away from you. Should maintain professional distance. Should treat you like any other person under my protection. But I can't stop thinking about last night. About how you tasted. How you felt against me. How much I wanted to... He broke off, jaw clenching. How much I still want to. Then why did you stop? Because you deserve better than a stolen moment born from fear and adrenaline. Better than a man who's killed more people than he can count. Better than someone who's dragged you into a war you never asked to fight. His forehead touched mine, and I felt him trembling with restraint. You deserve normal, Emma. Safe. A man who can give you a life without bulletproof windows and panic rooms. What if I don't want normal? I whispered. What if I want you? You don't know what you're saying. I'm saying I see you, Dante Carmine. Not the Dawn. Not the monster everyone else sees. You. The man who saves bookstores and cooks breakfast and pays his enemies' medical bills just to keep her safe. The man who's lonely and hurting and so desperate for genuine connection. He keeps pulling me close and then pushing me away because he's terrified of what it might mean. His hands framed my face, and when he looked at me, I saw everything, want and fear and hope and desperation all warring for dominance. If I kiss you again, he said hoarsely, I won't stop. I won't be able to. Good, I breathed. Don't stop. For one suspended moment we stood there, balanced on the knife's edge of a decision that would change everything. Then Dante surrendered. His mouth crashed against mine with none of the restraint from last night. This was raw need. Desperate hunger, the complete dissolution of the walls he'd built so carefully. I gasped against his lips and he swallowed the sound, backing me against the bookshelf with his body. Books tumbled around us as his hands tangled in my hair, as I clutched his shoulders, as months or maybe years of loneliness and fear and isolation poured out in the way we came together. Emma, he groaned against my throat. This is a terrible idea. Then stop talking and just kiss me. So he did. And in that dusty bookstore, surrounded by stories of romance and tragedy, with armed guards outside and danger lurking in every shadow, I fell completely and irrevocably into the arms of the most dangerous man I'd ever met. Knowing it was reckless, knowing it was wrong, knowing I'd never felt more alive than I did in that moment. Wrapped in darkness and desire, choosing the monster who'd chosen to save me. We didn't make it back to the penthouse before Dante's phone rang. He answered with visible reluctance, still watching me with eyes dark with want. What? Not a question. A demand for whoever had interrupted us to justify it. His expression shifted as he listened, going from frustrated to cold and dangerous in the space of a heartbeat. Where? How many? When? A pause. Lock down the building. No one in or out without my explicit approval. We're en route. He hung up, and when he looked at me, I saw the transformation. The man who'd kissed me breathless in the bookstore disappearing behind the Don's mask. What happened? I asked. The breathless we've been hunting made contact. They know you're with me. They know about the penthouse. His hand found mine, squeezed once. We need to move, now. The drive back was tense and silent, our convoy moving through the city with urgent precision. Dante made 3 more calls in rapid Italian, his voice clipped and commanding. By the time we pulled into the building's underground parking, his entire demeanor had shifted. This was the man who'd walked into the Golden Phoenix radiating lethal competence. But when he came around to help me from the vehicle, his touch was gentle. Stay close to me, he murmured. Don't leave my sight. Understand? I nodded, my earlier courage evaporating in the face of real, immediate danger. The elevator ride up felt like it took hours. Dante's men flanked us, weapons visible now, all pretense of civilian normalcy abandoned. When the doors opened onto his private foyer, I found it transformed into something resembling a military command center. At least a dozen more men occupied the space, some setting up computers and equipment, others checking weapons, all moving with practiced efficiency. The warm, beautiful penthouse had become a fortress. Report, Dante commanded, moving immediately to a bank of monitors someone had set up. Sir. A man I hadn't met yet, older, with graying hair and the bearing of someone who'd seen combat, stepped forward. At 11:47 hours, we intercepted communications from the remaining Brat Vassell. They've confirmed Miss Torres's location and are planning a direct assault on this building. How did they find out? Dante's voice could have cut glass. Unknown, but they're mobilizing significant resources. Estimate 12 to 15 men, possibly more. They're treating this like a war. Then we'll give them one. Dante pulled up building schematics on one of the monitors. How many do we have on site? 23, including perimeter. Another dozen can be here in under 10 minutes. Bring them. Lock down all access points except the front entrance. I want that channeled and controlled. Cameras on every angle. And get Marco on the phone. I want the other families to know that if the Bratva escalates, they'll face unified retaliation. Orders flew fast and precise. Watching Dante work was like watching a general prepare for battle. Every contingency planned. Every weakness shored up. Every person positioned for maximum effectiveness. And through it all, his eyes kept finding me, checking, assessing, making sure I was safe. Emma. He finally turned to me, his expression softening fractionally. I need you in the panic room. No, that wasn't a request, and I'm not one of your soldiers. I crossed my arms, refusing to be cowed. I'm not hiding in a room while you fight a war that started because I saved your life, which is exactly why you need to be protected. I saved your life once already. Dante, maybe I can do it again. For a moment, I thought he might argue, might have his men physically carry me to the panic room, but something in my expression must have convinced him, because he made a frustrated sound and ran a hand through his hair. Fine. But you stay here, in this room, with 2 guards at all times. You don't leave, you don't approach the windows, you don't make yourself a target. Deal? Deal. He pulled me close then, right there in front of a dozen armed men, and kissed me hard and fast, possessive and desperate and terrifying in its intensity. Stay alive. he murmured against my lips. Because if you die protecting me, I'll find a way to bring you back, just so I can kill you myself for the trauma. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Romantic. I'm a Don, not a poet. But his thumb traced my cheekbone with aching tenderness. Though for you, I might make an exception. Then he was gone, barking orders, checking weapons, transforming into the man the city feared. The next hour passed in terrible suspense. I sat in the corner of the living room, two of Dante's men positioned between me and the windows, watching the preparations. Someone had given me a bulletproof vest. Just in case, they'd said, which did nothing to calm my racing heart. Dante moved through the space like a force of nature, everywhere at once, missing nothing. I watched him check every man's position, every sight line, every possible point of attack. Watched him load weapons with practiced ease, his movements economical and deadly. This was who he really was. Not the man who kissed me in bookstores or cooked breakfast. This was the Don, the killer, the strategist, the man who'd built an empire on calculated violence, and I was irrevocably, inexplicably drawn to him. Movement. One of the men monitoring cameras spoke into his radio. Southeast corner, 3 vehicles. Looks like, confirming 14 men, visible weapons. Dante moved to the monitors, his expression never changing. Let them approach. Corridor sequence, I want them contained. When I give the signal, standard suppression. The men around the room nodded, checking weapons one final time. Dante. I couldn't help myself, had to say something before violence erupted. Be careful. He looked at me across the room, and for just a moment, the Don disappeared, and I saw the man underneath. Scared, determined, desperate to keep me safe. Always am, Bellissima. Always am. Then the shooting started. The first sounds were distant, gunfire from the building's lower levels, shouting, the controlled chaos of men in combat. But within minutes it escalated. The elevators were compromised, forcing Dante's men to form a defensive line in the foyer. They're coming up the stairs, someone reported. 6 floors down and ascending. Let them come. Dante's voice was utterly calm. Channels hold. Wait for my command. I watched through security monitors as the Bratva soldiers advanced, hard men with weapons, moving with their own brutal efficiency. They hit the first defensive position and were met with coordinated suppression fire that drove them back. Regrouped. Advanced again. The battle moved floor by floor, Dante's forces giving ground in controlled retreats, channeling the attackers into kill boxes and ambush points. It was horrifying and mesmerizing, a deadly chess game played with bullets and blood. 3 floors down, came the update. Dante checked his weapon one final time. Last defensive line in the foyer. Emma, he looked at me. If they breach this room, you run. Through the master bedroom, into the panic room. You seal the door, and you don't open it for anyone except me. Promise me. Dante, promise me, Emma. I promise. 2 floors. The men in the penthouse repositioned, taking cover behind furniture that had suddenly been reinforced, weapons trained on the elevator and stairwell access. The atmosphere shifted, from preparation to deadly readiness. 1 floor. I could hear it now. Gunfire, so close it made my ears ring. Shouting in Russian and English. The sharp crack of weapons that penetrated even the reinforced walls. The elevator dinged. Everyone froze. The doors opened to reveal nothing. Empty car. Lights flickering. Stairwell, someone shouted. The door burst open and chaos erupted. I'd never seen violence like this. Not in movies, not in nightmares. Dante's men moved with lethal precision, each shot deliberate, each movement calculated. The Bratva soldiers were skilled, but they were attacking a fortified position against prepared defenders. It was over in maybe 90 seconds. When the gunfire stopped, 6 bodies littered the foyer. All Bratva. None of Dante's men seriously injured, though I saw blood on a few uniforms. Clear the building, Dante commanded, his voice utterly steady despite the carnage. I want confirmation that no one else is coming. And someone get cleanup crews here. We have 30 minutes before the police show up. The organized chaos of aftermath began. Bodies removed, evidence sanitized, witnesses coordinated. Through it all, Dante orchestrated with the same calm efficiency he'd shown during the battle. Finally, he turned to me. "Are you hurt?" His hands ran over me, checking for wounds I didn't have. "I'm fine. You're the one who was just in a gunfight. Not my first." He pulled me against him, hard, burying his face in my hair. Not even my first this week, but definitely the most terrifying. Because of me. Because I finally have something to lose. He pulled back just enough to look at me, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes stole my breath. "If you'd been hurt, if they'd gotten to you..." "They didn't. You protected me, this time." His jaw clenched. "But they'll keep coming, Emma. As long as you're with me, you'll be in danger." "Then I'll stay in danger." I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. "Because leaving means giving up whatever this is between us. And I'm not ready to do that. Are you?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Just stared at me like he was memorizing my face, burning every detail into memory. Then he kissed me. Not the desperate passion from the bookstore or the possessive claim from earlier. This was different, tender and fierce all at once. A promise and a surrender. The complete dissolution of the last walls between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "You're mine now," he said quietly. "You understand that? I'm claiming you, Emma Torres. Officially. Which means every person in my organization will protect you like they protect me. It means you're untouchable. It also means you can never go back to your old life. I know. I'm giving you one last chance to run. To choose normal over this insanity." I thought about my tiny apartment, my double shifts, my life of barely scraping by. Thought about the fear and danger that now permeated everything. Thought about all the very reasonable reasons I should walk away from this man, this world, this impossible situation. Then I thought about how he made me feel. Protected, seen, desired. Alive in a way I'd never experienced before. "I choose you," I whispered. Monster and all. Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. "Then you're mine, completely, understand?" "I understand." "Say it." "I'm yours." He claimed my mouth again, deeper this time, his hand sliding into my hair with possessive certainty. Around us, his men were professionally, studiously ignoring us, continuing the cleanup with practiced efficiency. "Boss," one of them called. "Police are incoming, 3 minutes." Dante pulled back with visible reluctance. "Then we'd better get you cleaned up and our story straight. Can't have my woman looking like she just survived a war zone." "Is that what I am? Your woman?" "That's what you are." He brushed his thumb across my lips. "And God help anyone who tries to take you from me." As I stood there in a penthouse that smelled like gunpowder, surrounded by the aftermath of violence, being claimed by the most dangerous man in the city, I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt like I'd finally come home. The police came and went. Asking questions, Dante answered with the smooth confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Self-defense, attempted robbery. His security team had responded appropriately to a violent home invasion. The detective, a weary-looking woman in her 50s, took notes with an expression that suggested she knew exactly what Dante was, but couldn't prove it. "You lead a dangerous life." "Mr. Carmine," she said as she prepared to leave. "I'm a businessman, Detective Morrison. Sometimes people disagree with my business practices." His smile was all charm, completely at odds with the man who'd orchestrated a defensive battle 2 hours ago. "I'm simply grateful my security was adequate to protect myself and my companion." The detective's eyes cut to me, assessing. "Miss Torres, you're living here now?" I hesitated, unsure how to answer. "She is," Dante cut in smoothly, his hand finding the small of my back. Possessive, protective. "Miss Torres is under my personal protection after an incident last week. I'm sure you understand how dangerous the city can be." Something flickered in Morrison's expression. Understanding, maybe, or pity. Be careful, Miss Torres. Men like Mr. Carmine have a tendency to consume everything around them. I'll keep that in mind. After she left, Dante turned to me with raised eyebrows. Well, that was diplomatically vague. I didn't know what to say. The truth. He led me toward the bedroom wing, away from the controlled chaos of cleanup crews. Or as much truth as you're comfortable with. You live here now. You're with me. Anyone who asks deserves at least that much. And what are we exactly? I asked as we entered his bedroom. A space I hadn't seen before. All dark wood and masculine elegance, with those same floor-to-ceiling windows looking out on the glittering city. What do I call this? Dante closed the door, leaning against it. For the first time since the attack, he looked tired, truly exhausted, the weight of leadership and violence heavy on his shoulders. What do you want to call it? He asked quietly. I want to know what it means to you. He was silent for a long moment, studying me in that penetrating way that always made me feel exposed. Finally, he pushed off the door, closing the distance between us. I've had women, he said bluntly. Casual arrangements. Physical needs met without emotional entanglement. It's safer that way, for them and for me. In my world, caring about someone is a weakness enemies can exploit. But I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting you near me. Can't stop imagining what it would be like to have someone who actually understands this life. Who chose it, chose me, with full knowledge of what that meant. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones. You terrify me, Emma, because for the first time in 9 years, I actually have something to lose. My breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you. Not just physically, though God knows I want that too. I want you here, in my home, in my life. I want to wake up to you and know you're safe. I want to be the person you turn to, the one who protects you and... He broke off, jaw clenching. I want you to be mine completely. Is that clear enough? Very clear. My hands covered his, holding them against my face. But I need to know something first. Ask. Can you keep me safe? Truly safe? Because I'll choose you, Dante. I'll choose this life. But I need to know that it won't destroy me. I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you. His voice dropped to something dark and absolute. I have 600 men under my command. Every resource, every weapon, every connection I've built over 9 years, all of it will be used to protect you. The Bratva wanted a war? They'll get one. By the end of this week, they won't have a single operation left in this city. You'd do that? Start a war? Emma? He leaned down until our foreheads touched. I already have. The moment you whispered in my ear at the Golden Phoenix, the moment I decided you were worth saving, I committed to this path. Now I'm simply following through. People will die. Yes, but not you. Never you. His lips brushed mine, gentle despite the violent promises. So I'm asking again, what do you want from this? From us? I thought about the reasonable answer. The one that maintained boundaries, that kept options open, that protected my heart in case this all fell apart. Then I thought about the feel of his hands on me, the way he looked at me like I was precious, the absolute certainty in his voice when he promised to protect me. I want all of it, I whispered. I want to wake up next to you. I want to be the person you come home to. I want to learn all your secrets and have you know all of mine. I want whatever this is between us to be real, not just adrenaline or fear or survival instinct. It is real. His kiss was desperate, claiming, so fucking real it scares me. Then show me. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Show me what it means to be yours. Something primal flared in his expression, heat and possession and barely controlled need. Emma, I'm sure, Dante. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. For one suspended heartbeat, he held still, giving me space to reconsider. Then his control shattered. His mouth claimed mine with bruising intensity as his hands tangled in my hair, angling my head exactly where he wanted it. I gasped, and he swallowed the sound, backing me toward the enormous bed that dominated the room. When the back of my knees hit the mattress, I fell onto it with a small yelp that became a moan as he followed me down, his body covering mine with delicious weight. Tell me to stop. He growled against my throat. And I will. Always. You understand? Don't stop, I breathed. Don't you dare stop. What followed was acclaiming in every sense of the word. Desperate and tender, fierce and gentle. Dante worshipping every inch of my body like I was something precious, even as he possessed me with an intensity that left no doubt I was his. He learned what made me gasp, what made me arch into him, what made me cry out his name in a voice I barely recognized as my own. And when it was over, when we lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like cedar and smoke and us, I finally understood what it meant to surrender completely to another person. Mine, he murmured against my hair, his arm locked around my waist like even in sleep he couldn't let me go. Yours, I agreed, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. In the darkness of his bedroom, with the city lights casting shadows across his brutal, beautiful face, I made my choice. I would be the monster's woman, and I would never regret it. 3 days of peace. 3 days where I learned what it meant to be claimed by Dante Carmine. Mornings that started with his mouth on mine, nights that ended the same way, afternoons where he worked from the penthouse while I explored his extensive library, occasionally looking up to find him watching me with an expression that made heat pool in my belly. He was attentive in ways I'd never experienced, remembering how I took my coffee, ordering my favorite foods before I even mentioned them, surrounding me with small luxuries that proved he paid attention to every detail of my existence. You spoil me, I accused on the third morning, watching him present breakfast, fresh pastries from a bakery across the city that he'd sent men to retrieve. I take care of what's mine. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my lower lip. Get used to it. But beneath the domestic tranquility, I knew he was orchestrating something. Late-night calls in Italian where his voice went cold and commanding. Men coming and going at odd hours, reporting to him in low voices that I couldn't quite hear. The city outside might have looked normal, but I could feel the undercurrent of violence building like a storm about to break. On the fourth day, reality crashed back in. I was in Dante's office, a space I'd gradually been given access to, working on plans to actually finish my medical degree now that finances weren't an impossible barrier, when raised voices echoed from the foyer. Where is he? A woman's voice, sharp with anger. I know he's here, Dante. Stop hiding like a coward. I stepped out of the office to find chaos. A woman in her late 20s, stunning with dark hair and the kind of effortless elegance that suggested old money, stood in the center of the penthouse surrounded by Dante's security. She wore fury like couture. Miss Castellano, one of the guards was saying. Don't Miss Castellano me. Marco, I'm here to see my fiancé. The word hit me like a physical blow. Fiancé. Isabella. Dante's voice came from behind me, utterly calm. He moved past me without a glance, approaching the woman with measured steps. This is unexpected, is it? She laughed, the sound brittle. You've been avoiding my calls for a week. My father is asking questions about the wedding, and I come here to find... Her eyes cut to me for the first time, assessing and dismissive in equal measure. Who's this? The current flavor of the month? Watch your tone, Dante said quietly, but with enough menace to make Isabella's eyes widen fractionally. My tone. My tone? Her voice rose. I've been your fiancé for 2 years, Dante. 2 years of waiting, of playing the dutiful future wife while you built your empire. And now you're what? Replacing me with some waitress? The word stung, but not as much as the terrible sinking certainty in my gut. Isabella, Dante said again, we'll discuss this privately. No, I found my voice, stepping forward even though my legs felt unsteady. We'll discuss this now. Is she telling the truth? Are you engaged? Dante's jaw clenched. It's complicated. It's yes or no, Dante. He turned to face me fully, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Guilt. Technically, yes. I'm betrothed to Isabella Castellano. It's an arrangement between our families, made when I was 20. Political alliance, consolidation of power. It means nothing. It means I'm your fiancé, Isabella interjected sharply. It means we have a contract. It means you and I have an understanding. Dante cut her off. We've always had an understanding, Isabella. Our marriage is transactional. You get the Carmine name and protection. I get the Castellano alliance and resources. Love was never part of the equation. And she is? Isabella's smile was sharp as she gestured at me. You think you love this nobody? Dante Carmine, the man who never lets anyone close, suddenly gone soft for a waitress who saved his life. Get out, Dante said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. I'm your betrothed, and I'm your Don, he interrupted, each word precise and cutting. Which means when I tell you to leave my home, you leave, now, before I have you removed. Isabella stared at him for a long moment, then her gaze cut to me. Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. He always comes back to what makes sense. And I make sense. You're just an aberration. Then she turned and swept out, leaving a terrible silence in her wake. I couldn't look at him. Couldn't breathe. My mind was spinning, trying to reconcile everything I thought I knew with this new, awful information. Emma, you're engaged. My voice sounded hollow. You're engaged and you never thought to mention it? It's an arrangement that you're still in. I finally looked at him, and the hurt must have shown on my face because he flinched. You claimed me, Dante. You said I was yours. You made promises. And the entire time, you were already promised to someone else? It's not the same thing, isn't it? My voice cracked. How is it different? How is lying by omission any better than actual lying? I didn't lie. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered? You're engaged to another woman, Dante. How could that possibly not matter? Because she means nothing to me. His voice rose for the first time since I'd known him. Isabella Castellano is a contract, Emma. A political move my father arranged before he died. We've never been in love, never even pretended to be. It's a marriage in name only, designed to unite two families. But you never broke it off. Because breaking a betrothal like this has consequences. It threatens alliances, creates instability, potentially starts wars between families. He moved toward me, but I stepped back, and pain flashed across his features. I was planning to end it, Emma. After the Bratva situation was resolved, after I'd secured enough power that the Castellanos couldn't retaliate effectively, I was going to free myself from that obligation so you could what? Be with me? How convenient that you never mentioned any of this before you got me into your bed. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, the sound bitter. You want to talk about fair? I gave up my entire life for you, Dante. My home, my job, my independence. I chose you knowing how dangerous it would be, and you let me make that choice while hiding the fact that you were already promised to someone else. It's not the same thing, he repeated, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Then explain to me how it's different. Because from where I'm standing, I'm the other woman. The mistress. The dirty little secret you keep in your penthouse while your real life, your fiancé, your political arrangements, your empire, exists somewhere else. You are not a secret. He closed the distance between us before I could retreat, his hands gripping my shoulders. You are the most important person in my world, Emma, not Isabella. Not political alliances. You. Then prove it. The challenge escaped before I could stop it. Break the engagement, today, right now. Choose me over whatever consequences might come from ending that contract. He went very still, and I saw the war playing out behind his eyes. Love versus duty, desire versus responsibility, me versus an empire built on careful alliances. The silence stretched and stretched. And in that silence, I had my answer. You can't, I whispered, stepping back from his grip. You can't choose me because the cost is too high. Your empire, your power, your control, it all matters more than this, than us. Emma, it's exactly true. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the heated penthouse. And maybe that makes sense. Maybe I was naive to think a man like you could put love above everything else. But I can't do this, Dante. I can't be the woman you keep on the side while you marry someone else for politics. I won't marry her, he said fiercely. I'll find another way, will you? Or will you keep putting it off, finding reasons why now isn't the right time, until eventually it's too late and you're bound to her forever? I moved toward the bedroom. The guest room, I amended mentally. Not his bedroom anymore. I need time to think. Alone. Emma, please. I looked back at him, and the anguish in his expression nearly broke my resolve. I need space to figure out if I can live with being second place in your life. Because right now, I'm not sure I can. I left him standing there in the center of his penthouse. This man who commanded an empire but couldn't command his own heart. And for the first time since he'd claimed me, I wondered if love was enough to bridge the chasm between his world and mine. I didn't leave the guest room for 12 hours. Food appeared at regular intervals, left on a tray by the door with notes in Dante's sharp handwriting. Please eat. Please drink. Please don't shut me out completely. I couldn't bring myself to respond. The sun set, rose again. The city below went through its cycles while I lay in that too comfortable bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to reconcile my heart with my head. I loved him. The realization had been sneaking up on me for days, but now, in the sharp clarity of betrayal, I couldn't deny it anymore. I loved Dante Carmine, his ruthlessness and his tenderness, his violence and his protection, the way he looked at me like I was the only solid thing in a world built on shifting sand. But did love matter if I came second to his empire? Around noon on the second day, there was a knock on the door. Not Dante's sharp rap, but something gentler. Miss Torres? An unfamiliar female voice. My name is Sophia. I'm Mr. Carmine's attorney. He asked if you'd be willing to speak with me. I should have said no, should have maintained my wall of silence. Instead, I found myself opening the door to a woman in her 40s wearing an immaculate suit and a kind expression. May I come in? I nodded, stepping back. Sophia entered with a leather portfolio, settling into one of the chairs by the window with the ease of someone comfortable in luxury spaces. Mr. Carmine didn't ask me to convince you of anything, she began, but he did ask me to provide information he thinks you deserve to have. About the engagement. Yes. She pulled documents from the portfolio, spreading them on the coffee table. This is the original betrothal contract, signed when Dante was 20 years old. As you can see, it's quite comprehensive. I skimmed the legal language, my stomach sinking. Dante hadn't lied. It was clearly a political arrangement, detailing territorial agreements, profit sharing, and alliance terms. There was a clause about marital expectations that made my skin crawl. It's archaic, Sophia continued. And normally, breaking such a contract would have severe consequences. However, she pulled out more documents. These are 3 months of legal work Dante commissioned starting the day after you saved his life at the Golden Phoenix. I looked up sharply. 3 months? He began the process of extracting himself from the Castellano alliance the morning after meeting you. Before he knew you'd be in danger. Before the Bratva situation escalated. He saw you once, and decided Isabella Castellano was a problem that needed solving. My hands trembled as I examined the documents. Intricate legal maneuvering, financial compensations, territorial concessions. A paper trail of someone systematically dismantling an engagement, while protecting both families from the fallout. This is extensive. Mr. Carmine is nothing if not thorough. Sophia's expression softened. The issue is timing. Contracts like this have notice periods, cooling off phases, third-party mediations. Even with unlimited resources and the best legal team money can buy, properly ending this betrothal takes approximately 6 months. Dante's been working on it for 3. So he is ending it. He's been ending it since the moment he decided you were worth the political cost. Sophia gathered the documents carefully, which is why I'm here. To show you that while he may not have told you about the engagement immediately, he's been working to dissolve it since long before your relationship became intimate. Why didn't he just tell me? You'd have to ask him. But if I may speculate, she stood preparing to leave. I think he was terrified you'd see the engagement as a deal-breaker. That you'd leave before he had a chance to prove he was willing to blow up his carefully constructed political alliances for you. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, Miss Torres, I've worked with Dante Carmine for 7 years. I've never seen him prioritize anything or anyone above the empire he's built. Until you. After she left, I sat with those documents for a long time, reading and rereading, seeing the evidence of Dante's commitment, Laid out in legal prose, he'd been working to free himself from Isabella for 3 months. Since the day after we met, my anger didn't disappear. Entirely, he should have told me, but it softened, morphing into something more complex. Understanding mixed with hurt, love tangled with frustration. Finally, as the sun set again outside the window, I made my decision. I found Dante in his office, surrounded by monitors and files, looking like he hadn't slept since our confrontation. His eyes lifted as I entered, hope and fear warring in his expression. "Emma, your lawyer came to see me." He nodded slowly. "I asked her to show you the documents. You deserve to know what I've been doing, even if I should have told you myself weeks ago. You should have." I moved into the room, but kept distance between us. "You should have trusted me enough to explain everything from the beginning." "I know. I'm sorry." He stood, and I could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. "I've faced down rivals, orchestrated campaigns, built an empire from blood and ash. But the thought of you leaving, of losing you because of a contract I never wanted in the first place, it terrified me more than any enemy ever has. I'm not that fragile, Dante. Aren't you? You walked away when you found out, just like I feared you would, because you lied by omission, not because the engagement exists." I took a step closer. "If you'd told me from the start that you were working to end it, that you'd started the process before we even got together, I would have understood. I would have waited, but instead, you let me believe you were free when you weren't. And that felt like betrayal." "I know. You're right. I was a coward." His hands clenched at his sides, like it was taking everything in him not to reach for me. "And I'm sorry, Emma. Truly. I should have trusted you with the truth." "Yes, you should have." I closed the remaining distance between us, looking up into that brutal, beautiful face. "But Sophia showed me 3 months of work. 3 months of you choosing me over political stability, of you burning bridges and making concessions just to free yourself from an arrangement you never wanted." "I'd burn the entire city down if it meant I could have you," he said quietly. "The engagement, the alliances, all of it. It means nothing compared to you." "Then prove it one more time." I took his hand, placed it over my racing heart. "No more secrets. No more protecting me from hard truths. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to stay and be yours and let you be mine, I need complete honesty. Even when it's ugly. Even when you're afraid I'll leave. I can do that." His other hand came up to cut my face. "I will do that. I promise you, Emma, no more secrets. And the engagement will be officially dissolved in 3 months. Sophia's already drawing up the final documents. By the end of summer, Isabella Castellano will have a very generous settlement, and I'll be free." His thumb traced my lower lip. "Free to make you a better offer." My breath caught. "What kind of offer?" "The kind where you don't have to question whether you're first in my life. The kind where everyone knows you're mine and I'm yours. The kind that comes with a ring and a promise and—" He broke off, jaw clenching. "If you want it. If you'll have me after everything." Tears stung my eyes. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "I'm saying that when I'm finally free of Isabella, I'm going to ask you to marry me, Emma Torres." "Fair warning." His smile was crooked, vulnerable. "So if that's not something you want, speak now." I laughed through my tears, sliding my arms around his neck. "You're proposing a future proposal?" "I'm promising that you're it for me, that I'll spend the next 3 months proving I'm worth the wait, that once this engagement is truly, legally dead, I'm going to make you mine in every way that matters." "I'm already yours," I whispered. "Not like this. Not officially. Not in a way that makes the entire world understand that Emma Torres is untouchable, because she belongs to me and I to her." He kissed me then, and it felt like coming home. Desperate and tender, fierce and gentle. Everything we were to each other distilled into that single point of contact. When we finally broke apart, I saw tears on his cheeks matching mine. "I love you," he said hoarsely. I didn't want to, tried not to, but I love you, Emma. And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. "I love you too." I press my forehead to his. "Even when you're an idiot who keeps secrets to protect me, I'll do better. You better. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Because I'm staying, Dante Carmine. I'm staying and I'm yours, and in 3 months I'm going to say yes when you ask me properly. His smile was brilliant, transforming his features from beautiful to devastating. 3 months. I can work with that. Though, I added, we still have a bratva problem to solve. His expression darkened, going from lover to dawn in a heartbeat. Actually, no, we don't. What? While you were avoiding me, I finished what they started. He guided me to his desk, pulling up reports and photos I immediately wished I hadn't seen. The final bratva cell was eliminated 48 hours ago. Every operation they had in this city is gone. Every asset seized or destroyed. I sent Volkov's head back to Moscow as a message about what happens when you target what's mine. I should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual brutality of it. Instead, I felt safe. So it's over? It's over. You can leave this penthouse, go wherever you want, reclaim your life. Under guard, of course. I'm not crazy enough to leave you completely unprotected. But the immediate threat is gone. What if I don't want to leave? His eyes darkened. Emma, what if I want to stay here with you while you finish dissolving your engagement? What if I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep in your arms and learn what it means to build a life with someone? I pulled him close. Would that be okay? More than okay. His mouth found mine again, hungrier now. Perfect. Exactly what I want. We didn't make it to the bedroom for hours, and later, tangled in his sheets with the city lights painting patterns across his skin, I made my peace with the choice I'd made. I loved a monster, but he was my monster, and I wouldn't have it any other way. 3 months later, you're fidgeting. And later, tangled in his sheets with the city lights painting patterns across his skin, I made my peace with the choice I'd made. I loved a monster, but he was my monster, and I wouldn't have it any other way. 3 months later, you're fidgeting. I glanced at Dante, who stood beside me on the balcony of our penthouse, champagne flute in hand and an amused expression on his devastating face. I'm not fidgeting. You've adjusted your dress 3 times in the last minute, Bellissima. That's fidgeting. Fair point. The emerald green gown Dante had commissioned for tonight fit perfectly. But I couldn't stop touching the silk, smoothing non-existent wrinkles. Because tonight wasn't just any night. Tonight, the engagement to Isabella Castellano was officially, legally dissolved. Tonight, Dante Carmine was finally free. I'm nervous, I admitted. Why? The hard part is over. He set down his champagne, turning to face me fully. Isabella signed the final documents 3 days ago. The Castellano family accepted our settlement, very generously, I might add. The alliance has been restructured into a business partnership that doesn't require a marriage. It's done. I know. I trailed off, trying to articulate the flutter in my chest. What happens now? His smile was slow, predatory. Now I make good on a promise. Before I could ask what he meant, he dropped to one knee. My heart stopped. Emma Torres, he began, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. 3 months ago, I told you I would ask you to marry me once I was free. I'm a man of my word. He opened the box to reveal a ring that stole my breath, a flawless emerald surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum that caught the light like captured stars. I've built an empire on violence and strategy, on calculated decisions and ruthless elimination of threats. I've never believed in fate or destiny or any of that romantic nonsense. His voice dropped, going rough with emotion. Until you whispered 4 words in my ear and changed my entire world. Tears blurred my vision. Dante, let me finish. His thumb traced my hand, the gesture achingly tender. You've seen the worst of me, Emma. The killer, the Don, the man who's made decisions that would horrify most people. You've lived through attacks and betrayals and violence that should have sent you running, and you stayed. You chose me when you had every reason not to. Of course I stayed. I love you, and I love you, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. He lifted the ring from its box. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, the person I come home to for the rest of my life? Will you let me spend forever proving I'm worthy of you? I sank to my knees in front of him, framing his face with my hands. "You're already worthy, you idiot. And yes, 1,000 times yes." The smile that broke across his features was brilliant, transforming him from the dangerous Don into the man I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable and fierce and entirely mine. He slid the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, then pulled me into a kiss that tasted like champagne and promises. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I admired the ring sparkling on my hand. "It's perfect. It's an heirloom. Belonged to my grandmother, the only member of my family who believed love mattered more than alliances." His arms tightened around me. "She would have liked you. I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you. Would have said you're exactly what I needed. Someone strong enough to stand beside me, brave enough to challenge me, kind enough to remind me I'm human." He stood, pulling me with him. "Come, I have something else to show you." He led me through the penthouse to his office, where he pulled out a document from his desk drawer. "For you," I scanned the papers, my heart clenching. "This is the deed to the bookstore. Your bookstore now. I'm transferring ownership." I thought... He paused, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I thought you might want a project that's yours, that exists outside of my world. Somewhere you can build something beautiful without blood and violence attached." "Dante." I set the papers aside carefully, then launched myself at him, wrapping my arms around his neck. "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes." "Good. Be terrified together." His mouth found mine again, demanding and possessive. "Now, future Mrs. Carmine, I believe we have a celebration that requires significantly less clothing." His phone buzzed. We both froze. "Don't answer it," I murmured against his lips. "I have to. I'm sorry." He pulled it out with visible reluctance, checked the screen, and his expression shifted. "Merda, I need to take this." "Who is it?" "Family business." He pressed a quick kiss to my forehead. 5 minutes. I promise. Pour yourself more champagne." He disappeared into his office, voice already dropping into the cold, commanding tone he used for business. I poured champagne, moved to the windows, watched the city glitter below. This city that was both beautiful and brutal, just like the man I'd agreed to marry. 5 minutes stretched to 10, then 15. Finally, Dante emerged, and something in his expression made my stomach clench. "What happened?" "Nothing catastrophic. But there's a situation in Chicago. One of my associates needs immediate assistance with a territorial dispute. If I don't handle it now, it could escalate into something much worse." My heart sank. "You have to leave, tomorrow morning. I'll be gone 3, maybe 4 days." He pulled me close, radiating frustration. "Terrible timing, I know. The night I propose. The night we should be celebrating. Hey." I pressed my fingers to his lips. "This is your world. Our world now. I understand that sometimes duty comes first. Not first. Never first anymore." He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my new engagement ring. "But I can't ignore this. Lives are at stake. Not just my people, but innocent people caught in the crossfire." "Then go. Handle it. Come home safe." I managed to smile despite the disappointment. "I'll be here when you get back. With wedding plans, I hope? With so many wedding plans, you'll regret proposing." His laugh was warm, genuine. "Impossible. I'll never regret you, Emma Torres, soon to be Emma Carmine." We spent that night tangled together, making promises in gasps and whispers, cementing our engagement in the most primal way possible. And the next morning, I watched him leave from the balcony, black SUV disappearing into traffic, taking my heart with him. 4 days, I told myself. 4 days and he'd be home, and we'd start planning the future we'd fought so hard to claim. I had no idea that in 72 hours, everything would change again. That danger wasn't finished with us yet. That loving Dante Carmine meant living on the knife's edge between safety and catastrophe. But even if I'd known, even if I could have seen the chaos coming, I would have made the same choice. Because he was mine. And I was his, and nothing, not distance, not danger, not the entire violent world he inhabited, would ever change that. 6 months later, I stood in the our bookstore, arranging a display of new releases while morning light streamed through the windows. The space had changed since Dante transferred ownership to me. More reading nooks, a small cafe in the corner, a children's section I'd carefully curated. But the heart of it remained the same, a quiet refuge in a violent city. The bell above the door chimed. I looked up, smiling, expecting a customer. Instead, I found my husband, Dante Carmine. My husband for 3 months now, after a small, private ceremony that had been perfect precisely because it had been only us, his closest men, and a judge who knew better than to ask questions, leaned against the doorframe with that devastating smile that still made my knees weak. "Shouldn't you be at a meeting?" I asked, moving to him automatically. I rescheduled. "Wanted to see my wife." His arms came around me, pulling me close. "Do I need a better reason?" "Not complaining." I tilted my face up for his kiss, sighing into it. "How's the Chicago situation?" "Resolved. Permanently." Which meant someone had died, but I'd learned to accept that aspect of his world. And the shipment from Boston is on schedule. The new distribution network is operational, and Marco sends his regards from Miami. Busy day for a Don. "Always." He glanced around the bookstore, pride evident in his expression. "This place is thriving. You've quadrupled revenue in 6 months. Turns out people like bookstores that aren't being used as money laundering fronts." Shocking. His hand slid to my stomach, resting there with heart-stopping tenderness. "How are you feeling?" I covered his hand with mine, still getting used to the small swell that had appeared over the last few weeks. "Good. Morning sickness is finally easing up." "And the doctor's appointment yesterday?" "Everything's perfect. The baby is healthy, growing right on schedule." I leaned into him. She asked if we wanted to know the sex. "Do we?" I thought about it for a moment. No, I want to be surprised. To meet them when they arrive and discover who they are then. Them. Dante's voice went rough. "Our child. I still can't quite believe it. Believe it. In 6 months, you're going to be a father." Something raw and vulnerable crossed his expression. Fear and hope and overwhelming love all tangled together. "What if I'm terrible at it?" "You won't be." I turned in his arms, holding his gaze. "You'll be protective and patient, and you'll teach them how to be strong without being cruel. How to build rather than just destroy. You'll be an amazing father, Dante. I want them to have what I didn't. Safety. Both parents. A childhood that isn't about survival and violence." "They will." I pressed my hand over his heart. "Because we're going to build it for them. Together." He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promises. For our future, for our child, for the life we were creating from the ashes of violence and fear. When the bell chimed again, we broke apart to find Sophia, his attorney, looking amused. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have that conference call in 10 minutes. Dante groaned but nodded. "I'll be there." He turned back to me. "Dinner tonight?" "I'll cook. Your Nonna's recipe?" "Anything for you, Bellissima. And our bambino." After he left, I returned to my work, humming softly. The bookstore filled gradually with customers, young professionals on lunch breaks, students seeking refuge, elderly couples browsing hand in hand. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that the woman helping them find books was married to the most dangerous man in the city. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "How's my grandbaby?" "Feeling better?" I smiled, typing back, "Much better. Come visit next month? Dante wants to show you the nursery he's building." Her response was immediate. I wouldn't miss it for the world. "Love you, sweetheart. Love you too, Mom." As afternoon shifted toward evening, I locked up the bookstore and headed home, to the penthouse that had transformed from a fortress to a home, where Dante was waiting with dinner, and that smile that was only ever for me. I'd saved a monster's life with 4 whispered words, and he'd saved mine right back. Not with violence or power or money, but with love, the dangerous, desperate, all-consuming love that had transformed both of us into something neither of us had known we could be.